Hello, this is Karen again. This is chapter 6, problem solve, and we're just going to make a copy of our sales worksheet. So right click, copy, move our copy. You want to make sure you check create a copy or it just moves it, and we want to put it at the end, so before sheet, move to end. And then we're going to just rename this to Sales Backup. And then go back to the sales worksheet. And we're going to insert a table with headers. And if you blink, if we just click right here, it takes in A15. So it took in that we had headers down to I-212. So I'm going to click OK. And then now we want to name ranges using the top row. So I'm going to go to Formulas, Create from Selection, and uncheck left column. So it'll name each one of these for us. And if you want to just double check, you can hit your name manager. And now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And then my table. Yep. Okay. Now we're going to copy the range A15 to I-15. So copy and put it in A1 to I-1. And then in G2, we're going to put in receptionist. So this is setting up an advanced filter, basically. And then here, we're going to type in card. And if you'll click in your table, it doesn't matter where in your table. If you'll click there, it sets up your advanced filter a little bit better for you. So I'm going to go to Data, Advanced, in our Sort and Filter. And notice because I was down here, it picked up my whole list range. Now if I go to Criteria Range, is up here. A1 to I2. And then we're going to filter in place. And that's it. Okay, so if you get nothing, you spelled receptionist wrong or card wrong, one of the two. Okay, so you should have 13 records. And now we're going to copy this, insert a new sheet, name it filter, and we're going to copy this data and place it in A1, my filtered worksheet, and then resize the columns. So if I select all my columns and double click in between any of them, it doesn't matter which one you pick, it will auto fit all of those columns. Okay, now let's go back to our sales worksheet, and then in J15 we're going to type in subtotal, and we're going to, it says in J16, but don't worry about it because it's filtered and it doesn't tell us to take off the filters. So we're going to just stay right here. And it wants us to enter a formula using a structured reference that multiplies units and retail price. So a structured reference is this. Notice it's the column name. Okay, so that's a structured reference, is kind of your named range, so to speak, but for a table. And then we're multiplying that times the retail price. And then we're going to select the whole column and format it as accounting. And then we need to create a named range. Formulas. Using this name as, so I'm going to create from selection, top row. Now we do need to modify this because it only goes to 209. So we need to come in here to our name manager, find our subtotal, and notice it took in J16, but it stopped at 209, and we need to make it stop at 212. So once you do that, click the check mark, and then close. Now we're going to come up here and calculate this information based on our table. Okay, so transaction count. We want to count the number of sales in the category field that are not empty. So I'm going to just start typing. Oops, I need to use the subtotal function. Notice I have two. I've got a named range, the name tag, and I have a function. So I'm going to use the function because it gives us a subset of our table. Okay, and then I want to do a count, but I need to do a count A. If you remember, count A counts non-blank cells, and count actually counts, it can only count number fields. It doesn't count alphabet. So when I want to count alphabet, letters, I just think of count A. Okay, so I'm going to count A. And then we've already named this range, so I'm just going to call it category. Oops. But you gotta... There we go. Alright, and then we're going to do the same thing for the units. Subtotal. This time we want to sum up the units field. And then the next one is subtotal. Sum the subtotal field. So make sure you're picking the name tag. And then the next one is subtotal. And this time we're going to take the average, which is the first one, of retail price. So what this does is the subtotal function number just gives us the subset of what we're looking at. Okay, so if I did a 103, which if you looked at your list, I've got 103s in here. Same thing as a 3. Okay, if I do that, it's still the same. It should be the whole table, but I'm not sure why that's not working. So, anyway, 3, count A, sum, and then average. Okay, so now we're going to use the range A15. We're going to create an insert a pivot table. Okay, so I'm just going to click down here, get my table, insert pivot table, but it says table 1, but I want to change it to A15 through J212. Okay, and then I'm going to F4 both of those. Okay, so my table range is A15 through J212. I'm going to put it into a new worksheet. And we're going to configure this pivot table using the following steps. So I'm going to add units. And you need to make sure you do it in the right order, okay? And then staff. And then staff category. So your pivot table should look like this. Then we're going to move staff category. Notice when I insert things, it throws it into rows unless it's a value, and then it automatically puts it in a values area. So I need to move staff category to columns. Okay. Oops, I put it in the wrong spot. Wasn't supposed to go. It's supposed to go into sales analysis, guys. Sorry. Let's see if I can cut A12, paste. Ah, sweet. Okay, so if you'll select the whole pivot table, like I did, and then just Control X or right click and cut, and then we can drop it into A12 and you just paste it right there, and then we'll delete that sheet. Okay, sorry about that. Now using the column labels arrow, which is right here, column labels, the down arrow, we're going to uncheck manager. Okay, now we're just looking at our employees. And then in E14, if we right click, we're going to sort in ascending order, which is A to Z, or smallest to largest. Okay, now we're going to look at this information and answer these questions. Who were the 2 top salespeople in terms of units sold? Well, looks like Kendra and Christy. So then I'm going to come up here. They've got to drop it down. I'm going to say Kendra and Christy. Who was the bottom salesperson in terms of units sold? Well, that would be Susan, right? And then Susan. And then who was the salesperson with 30 units? Well, that's Pat. Okay, now we're going to come back into your pivot table, so click on it. Now we're going to make some changes to answer this question. And we're on step 12. So I'm going to add the category to the filters area. So I'm going to add category. So I can just click on it and drag it into filters. And it said add it. If you double click on it, it adds it in your rows, and then you have to move it to filters. So either way, you did it. Add the hotel guest field. So I'm going to go find hotel guest. Now I put it in my rows. And we want it after staff, which is where it put it. Now in A15, we want to replace no with non-hotel guest. And yes with hotel guest. And then we want to resize A so that this is visible. So I'm just going to come up here and bring it over. Okay. Now back in the design tab, we're going to modify our grand totals. So the design tab's up here. We're going to modify our grand totals. So I have our layout area. And we want our grand totals to display at the bottom of the group. So I can turn them on or off. And subtotals, not. Yeah, subtotals. Modify the grand totals to display. Oh, just for columns. Sorry, I knew I'd read that. For columns only. Okay. Notice it took off my totals over here. And then my subtotal I want to put on the bottom of the group. Okay, right now they're at the top. I want them on the bottom. Now we're going to view the pivot table to determine the percentage of revenue for the massage therapist, percent of grand total. Now in your homework it'll tell you more specifically how to do this. I think it's a food category or something like that. But you come over here to our totals, okay, our values. We're going to click the down arrow, and we're going to go to value field settings. And this is where I can change it to count, average, sum, whatever I might want. Here, right now I'm summing. Okay, I could change it to count and those numbers would change. Okay, now I'm going to show value as. Okay, and then show value as, and there's no calculation right now. But we're going to click the down arrow, and we want percent of grand total. And then click OK. Now it gives us a percentage of the total. So here's our massage therapist, our nail techs, and our receptionist. Okay, so what's the revenue, percentage of revenue coming from massage therapist? Well, I scroll down and I look, and it's 67.37. Okay, so come back in here and select 67.37. Alright, now we're going to jump, actually click on the sales analysis worksheet, insert a slicer. Okay, so I'm going to come up here to insert, and then slicer. This is part of your filters. Okay, but we need to be, before we go there, make sure you're in your table somewhere. It doesn't matter where. Insert slicer. And we're going to select the trans type. And then we want to select cash and check. So I'm going to hit the control key and select check. Now that you notice our numbers are changing. We're going to drag the slicer to the upper left corner is in G12. So upper left, G12. And when you're working with charts, remember to leave a little bit of white space around it and you won't get them marked wrong. And then we're going to drag the bottom up to reduce a lot of the white space, but not all of it. Because if I get scroll bars, you don't want that. Okay, so just enough that you don't have a scroll bar. And then we're going to replace the caption of trans type with payment type. So if you look up here, I've got my slicer toolbar. And then over here, there's a slicer caption. So I'm just going to take that and type in payment type. And then it changes our caption here. Okay, so using the pivot table, so I'm going to make sure I'm on my pivot table. We're going to create a clustered column pivot chart. Okay, so I can come in here to analyze. Remember, always use your pivot table tools first. Okay, if you can't find it there, then you go look somewhere over here. Okay, so I'm going to do a pivot chart, clustered column, and it doesn't specify, you know, so we're just going to grab that one and move this. Remember to move using your chart tools. Move chart to a new sheet called sales chart. Add the chart title. Okay, so there's not a chart title. I'm going to go into, you know, look for something that has chart title. Design. There's add chart elements. Okay, so I'm going to add chart elements, chart title, and it wants to be above. and then double click. Oh, percent. New. Percent revenue contribution. And that's the end of problem solve 6.